Welcome to another episode of the Runel Talks Real Estate Show. Now, today we're going to discuss often a very controversial but also a very important topic. And we will be talking about the costs that are involved when you are either buying or selling a property, or even when you are renting a property. Now, I think what is important to know is that often you just see a selling price, or you see what is the potential rent, and you are not always aware of all of the costs that's involved, or all of the additional costs that you actually need to budget and plan for. So it can often come as an ugly surprise, and we want to educate you today to know what are the costs that will be involved, what do you need to look out for, and also to help you in your planning and your budgeting, as well as to really understand your affordability when you take into account all the different costs. Now, today we are fortunate to have Johan Pienaar back with us for this discussion. So Johan, welcome back and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Renal. I appreciate it.
Okay. And then, so Johan has been with us for some of the previous shows, but just to quickly tell you again, so Johan obtained his LLB degree at the University of Pretoria and was admitted as an attorney of the High Court of South Africa in 2005. And he's been a director at Van der Walt Hugo since 2015. And Van der Walt Hugo was incorporated already back in 1996. So you can hear a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge that Johan will be sharing with us today. And then we will also be sharing the contact details in the description below if you want to contact them after this. So Johan, thank you. And we're looking forward to listen to all your wisdom.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I want to kick off, and I think especially when you now want to buy a property, and then we always hear about this transfer duty. So maybe you can just start off and explain to us what the transfer duty is all about, where does it fit in?
So your transfer duty is basically it's tax payable to SARS when you buy a property, but there's a threshold of 1,210,000 rand or less. So if you buy a property of 1 million rand, there's no transfer duty payable. It's only for properties where the purchase price is more than 1,210,000 rand. So it's always important to, and we're going to discuss it now, but it's always important to ask your agent when you buy a property for a quote from an attorney. Know exactly what the costs are. We're going to explain everything now, but your transfer duty is only payable above the threshold. So if it's below that, there's no transfer duty. There might be VAT payable, depending on the transaction. If it's a VAT transaction, your seller must be registered for VAT, and the VAT amount must be included in the offer to purchase in the contract. Then there's no transfer duty payable, even if the amount is less than the threshold exemption. So it's either a VAT transaction or a transfer duty transaction.
Johan and they will also be so kind to share their calculator with us. So we're going to have the link for you in the description below. So there you can go and you can go to the calculator where you can calculate what the transfer duty and the bond costs would be on any transaction. So please make use of that. Johan, I think then just on the transfer duty, like you mentioned now, it's payable to SARS. So there people should also know that it's not obviously consistent also in terms of the threshold. So that can obviously change from time to time, and people should be aware that they must constantly go look into in terms of what's the new threshold, if there've been any changes, what's the new costs. So that is not like a fixed cost.
No, it's definitely not a fixed cost. Every year with the budget, not every year, it doesn't change every year, but it's, I think last year it changed. This year it stayed the same. So it's not every year, but you still need to make sure that the amount, if you have a quote and it's maybe 2 years old, just make sure that the transfer duty payable is still the same. So you need to make sure on the amount.
Okay, and then I notice often if you see a property being advertised, it sometimes says like in no transfer duty. So that also comes in when you are buying directly from a developer, then there's usually no transfer duty.
Yes. So normally there's no transfer duty if you buy from a developer, but it could be a VAT transaction depending on the purchase price, because your seller, being your developer, is registered for VAT, and your purchase price will include VAT. So that's where you need to make sure that if you sign the offer to purchase, even if your cost is included, that you make sure that your VAT is included in the purchase price. Because if it stipulates that it's excluding VAT, you still need to pay VAT on top of the purchase price. So it's always wise to ask your agent or the developer if VAT is included in the purchase price, to make sure that you don't pay extra VAT on the purchase price and you did not make provision for that extra 15%.
Okay, and then if you buy a standard house that is already an established house, then and it is above the threshold, then and it's not VAT registered, then you will be paying transfer duty.
Yes, then we'll pay transfer duty as per the scales that you get from SARS, as we just discussed, if the purchase price is more than the threshold exemption.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thanks for explaining that. Then I also want to understand from you, say for example, for individuals, if you are registered for VAT in your personal capacity, so you are maybe a consultant, you have a business, a sole proprietor, you are maybe an agent earning commission, and you are registered for VAT. Now, if you are selling your private home or your investment property, will that then be applicable, or how does that work?
It all depends on when you bought the property. If you bought the property as a VAT vendor, that you claim VAT. So what will happen is, if you buy a property, let's say from a developer, and you are VAT registered and it was a VAT transaction, then it is possible, all depends on the feedback that you get from SARS, that the transaction is a VAT transaction. But if it's a private residence and you bought the property from a developer and he was registered for VAT, you weren't registered for VAT, then it will most probably be a transfer duty transaction. So the fact that you are registered for VAT does not necessarily mean that it's a VAT transaction.
Yeah.
So you will always need to consult with your bookkeeper or your auditor to make sure if it's a VAT transaction or not, if you're the seller of that property.
Yeah, and I think it also makes a difference whether you are kind of like in almost trading in property or not. So if you don't, it's just a private house and you are registered for VAT because you are a consultant doing financial consulting work or something totally irrelated to or unrelated to property, then obviously VAT won't be applicable.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Then I also want to ask you, because I think sometimes we hear transfer duty and then we think it's only transfer duty, or we hear transfer fees and then we think it's just one term or one payment, and then it comes as the surprise, okay, no, it's actually something separate. So maybe just tell us more a bit about transfer fees. What is that all about?
So your transfer fees is basically paid to the attorney for the services rendered to transfer the property. It might include VAT if the attorney is registered for VAT. And then all the other expenses associated with the transfer of the property, if it's your deeds office fees that needs to be paid, there's no VAT payable on that amount. So it's all the fees from the attorney to and your levies, your levy statement, your certificate fees that you need to get before registration. So it's basically going to be, and I'm going to go through the list to explain this to you. So if you look at the transfer, you get your transfer duty. That's part of your account. And I think that's where the problem, steps in. When you see a client, they will get a quote and they will do it online and they will see, okay, transfer duty is, let's say, 20,000. And then they don't realize that there's transfer fees and transfer duty. So as I explained previously, is your transfer duty is payable to SARS. We as a transfer attorneys pay it over to them, but the transfer fees are the fees that needs to be paid to either the deeds office, the homeowners, the body corporate, to get certificates, your city council. We mostly work with Tshwane. So that is all the cost associated with transfer of the property. So it's two different. One is taxes, and the other one is fees. Attorney's fees included our fees, and that's actually, we do get a lot of questions from and requests from clients to give discount on a transaction. But unfortunately, we can only give discount on our fee and not on the total amount. So what will happen sometime is you get an account for, let's call it 40,000 Rand, and there's 10,000 payable to SARS for transfer duty. We cannot give discount on the total 40,000. So that is just to explain, and people need to go and look, and they need to get quotes from attorneys, from the agents. There's bond originators can help people with quotes to make sure that you understand the cost involved in buying a property.
Yeah, and I think that is really important for people to understand, so that you are not already over indebted from day one, because you kind of like in thought, okay, I'm going to pay 1.5 million for this house, and you haven't like budgeted for all of these additional costs. And I think we will touch on whether a bond or a home loan covers any of these a bit later on. But yeah, it is really important, I think, for people to fully understand what fees can be included and when will what be applicable. But also in terms of, I know there's other fees like your FICA and your ACMAN and all of those kind of fees. Would that also form part of the transfer fees, or can people expect to see additional fees on their total statement?
On the statement, there will be a FICA fee. There will be post and petties, which is not included in your fees, the transfer fees. So it's different fees. So it's for different work that needs to be done. The transfer fees is for the transfer of the property from the seller to the purchaser. But your FICA fees is, we need to make sure as attorneys that the clients that we are working with has IDs. They have a proof of residence, antenuptial agreements. So we need to get all the documents make sure that the person that we are dealing with is the actual person signing the offer to purchase. So that's your FICA fee. I'm just going through the list. Your deed search. We need to make sure that if the property is sold, that we make sure that the property is registered in the seller's name before we even start on our file. We need to make sure that the property actually exists. So you need to do a deed search, do it at the deeds office. They have all the information of all the properties, and we do a search to make sure, as I said, that this person actually owns this property, and the person that we are dealing with is the person signing the documents. So transfer duty, we need to submit our transfer duty with SARS. There's a fee for that, and the deeds office fees. We need to pay the deeds office on any and every transaction that's registered in the deeds office. We need to pay them. It's part of our expenses, and we pay them as we register. So as soon as the transaction is registered, we need to pay them that portion of the amount that's included in the statement. So not all the amount, as I explained previously, is part of the fees that the attorneys, get at the end of the day. Some of them are expenses that need to be paid after the date of registration.
Yeah. So the attorneys are definitely not the thieves stealing your money. There's actually a lot of things happening behind the scenes and things that's really important for the transaction to go smooth. And as we know, there are costs involved for all of these things to be checked and to run smoothly. Then, Johan, I think what we also need to discuss, because people often think about if they're taking out a bond, now I, say, for example, need to pay 10,000 Rand on my bond, and they believe that is all the expenses that they need to budget for, but then there's bond fees coming in. So again, like, in what's bond fees all about and how does that work?
So if you apply for a bond, if you buy a property and you apply for a bond and the bond is registered, you will pay your monthly debit order. Most of the banks will ask for a debit order on the amount in your contract with the bank. So let's call it 10,000 Rand. But before registration, to register the bond, the attorneys that's nominated by the bank to assist with the registration of the bond will ask for bond registration fees. So that's separate from your transfer duty, separate from your transfer fees. That is a separate account. And I think this is the problem that most people, that never bought a property, they only realize after they bought the property and after the bond is granted that now they're sitting with two fees and they don't know why. Because you do get instances where it's the same attorney appointed as the transfer and the bond attorneys. And now all of a sudden there's two accounts and they don't understand why. But it's two separate instructions. So one comes from the bank where you register a bond on that property. And the other one is where you transfer the property from the seller to the purchaser. So it's two, and on our fee structure, you will see it makes provision for bond costs and for transfer fees. So it's two different accounts.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. And then am I correct in saying that when they go to your calculator, they can also see what the bond fees would be?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And then
it's just important to know, sorry, that it's an estimate. So you do get, and I know we're going to talk about it a bit later as well, but if it's a first-time home buyer or any other client, it does happen that the bank will give you a discount on the instruction, where the attorney needs to give you a discount no matter what. So the amount is just an estimate that the people need to go and look at, but there might be something different discount, or there's so many things that can change, but it's always good to first, before you buy a property and you know you're going to apply for a bond, to go and check your bond fees, your transfer duty, to know that you can afford the property. It does happen many times that people buy a property, they apply for the bond, they get the bond, but end of the day, they don't have the money to pay all the different fees for transfer to take place. So it's very important to go.
Yeah, no, and I think there can be a lot of disappointment if you only realize later on you don't have the money for all of this. Johan, and I know then also if you now already have a bond and you're going to buy, you're going to sell that property, you're going to buy another property, or you may be going to buy an investment property also. Then there's also like in bond cancellation fees. So how is that again different?
So your bond cancellation fees, so your seller will pay the bond cancellation fee because the bond is registered in the owner's name. And if you cancel your bond, you apply for cancellation figures from the bank, and the attorneys appointed by the bank will give you an account for the cancellation of that bond. So even if your bond is on zero, you don't owe any money to the bank, you still need to cancel your bond to get your title deed back from the bank. So there's always cost involved, and that's difficult to say how much, because each and every bank got different fees that you're allowed to put into your statement. But normally your cancellation fees will be between, I would say, 5.5 and 7,000 rand, depending on the bank. So that is a fee that the seller will pay. The buyer will never be liable for the bond cancellation fees. And the seller will pay that to the attorneys appointed by the bank.
Okay. And then, but then obviously if you are selling a place and you're buying a new place, so then you will have bond cancellation fees on your existing bond, and then you will have bond fees on the new property that you are buying.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so then you need to budget for both of those fees. Then I also just want to understand for cash buyers. Then, so for them who's not applying for a bond, then obviously there will be no bond fees, but there will be transfer fees and potentially transfer duty or VAT, dependent on which one is applicable.
Yes, depending on the transaction. Yes, that's true. So if you buy a property and you have cash to buy that property, it's a cash deal, you don't need to register a bond, then there's no bond fees payable. Then you will only pay, as you said, your transfer duty, if any, VAT, and your transfer fees.
Okay, excellent. And then also coming back to the bond, often people require, like in bond pre-approval. Is there any costs involved in that process, or is that usually free?
No, your pre-approval is free. So you get banks that will do a pre-approval, you get bond originators that will assist you, and that's always a good guide to know that if you buy a property that you qualify for the bond that you want to apply for. So, but there's no cost involved in that. It's a service that the banks will render to make sure that people buy a property which they can afford.
Okay, and then when you are buying a property, if you think about a deposit, is it a requirement that you make a deposit, or is it just if you have the money? So just share with us a little bit what's the legal requirements around the deposits.
Look, a deposit depends on affordability. So if you know that you will only afford, and that's where pre-approval is it's always wise to go for a pre-approval. If you know that you only qualify for, let's say, 1.2 million rand, and you want to buy a property for 1.4, you need to make sure that you've got a deposit in order to get a bond approval. But there's no requirement for a certain percentage of the purchase price to be paid as a deposit. It all depends on, is it your first property? Do you have numerous properties? Do you have investment properties? The more properties you own, the bigger the chance that the bank will ask you for a deposit. But that's not always the case. You need to make sure that if you buy a property, how much you qualify for. If you buy a property, as I said, for 1.2 million and you register a bond for 1 million, you need to make sure that you have sufficient funds for the deposit, for your transfer duty, transfer fees. There's no transfer duty payable on that amount, but just to explain, and all the other expenses. So it's very important, and I've said it previously as well, it's always important to go and look what you qualify for. Even before you go and buy a property, ask for quotes, ask for a bank, if you bank with a certain bank, for a pre-approval. If you have a bond originator, ask for a pre-approval that before you even sign the contract. All the expenses involved and how much deposit you need to pay, but there's no set percentage on a deposit that needs to be paid.
Okay. Johan, I think what's also important to remember there, that sometimes you have, for example, 200,000 that you think you're going to use as a deposit, and now you said, okay, I can apply for a bond for, say, for example, 1 million, and the house is 1.2, and then you realized, okay, but I have all these costs, so I should potentially rather use the 200,000 for all the costs and maybe not as a deposit. So maybe I don't have that cash flow to pay for the costs on top of the deposit. And now you've almost like you cannot really afford 1.2, you can only afford 1 million. So I think it is so important to really understand all of these things. And I think then you get to, now you've got your beautiful new home and you can move in, and now you realize you potentially have to pay all of the levies as well. So what levies can potentially be applicable, and in what instances can levies apply?
So if you buy it all depends. Full title, sectional title, there might be a homeowners registered, and there's levies payable to the homeowners, or there's a body corporate registered, and you need to pay levies to the body corporate. So if you buy a property, it's always wise to go through the contract, make sure if there's a homeowners or a body corporate registered on the title deed, and what the amount is, the monthly payment on the levies that needs to be paid. So once you're owner of that property, you're liable for that amount, and you need to pay that every month. It all depends on the body corporate. You need to ask the agent on what the levies are, so that you know when you buy the property, affordability is not going to be a problem, because that's fee, same as your City of Tshwane, your rates and taxes that needs to be paid, that you need to pay every month.
Yeah, and I think also what often comes in there is sometimes you have like a standard fee that you need to pay as a levy to your body corporate or your homeowners, but sometimes there's also special levies being added, because maybe the body corporate's got like in a big painting project, or maybe a big solar project, and now they're also charging an additional or special levy on top of it. So that is also something that you need to confirm and make sure that you are aware of it, so that you don't get that as an additional surprise. But then, Johan, if you basically buy a property that is not in an estate and it is full title, then there won't be any levies.
There won't be any levies payable. Only your rates and taxes that's payable to the in our case, as I explained previously, let's call it Tshwane or City of Johannesburg. It all depends on the municipality, but that's the only fees that you're going to pay. There might be fees payable if you live in a boomed off area that needs to be paid, but that it is, so it's not registered on your title deed. So if it's not registered on your title deed, you don't need to pay the monthly levy. So that's basically, a payment if and when you want to pay, if I can call it that. It's not a requirement to pay. There's no law stating that you must pay that amount. It's just for security reasons and to make sure that there's sufficient funds for whatever you need to do in that boomed off area to keep it safe. So, but it's not a requirement to pay that. But it's always wise to ask your agent, if it's in a boomed off area, if there is a homeowner's registered, and if the amount is payable, if it's a ex gratia payment, basically, is it a monthly payment? Is it registered in a title deed? That's the question that you need to ask.
Yeah, because we live in a boomed off area, and I think there's sometimes quite a lot of debate and arguments about new people moving in, and they were not aware of it, and now they are not happy that they need to pay for it, or they didn't budget. So I think those things are, again, because you do benefit from that security principles that have been installed. So ideally you want to contribute and help the bigger community keeping the place safe, and it's for your own safety as well. But again, take these things into account when you do your budgeting. And then also so water and electricity. So you will typically, for water and electricity and rates and taxes, that will basically be charged, or you will become liable for that from registration date, or what's the rules around that?
So from date of registration, rates and taxes, your total account will be payable to your city council. So, but it's only from date of registration. If you move into the property before date of registration, your usage will form part of your rental, basically, if it's not included. So you need to also make sure that when you move into a property, and that's where rentals, we're also going to discuss that a bit later, you need to make sure that you know what the meter readings are. So if you move into a property, go and take a photo of the meter reading. If it's, let's call it, the water usage is 100, end of the month, you can go and check. And when you get your account, you know what you're liable for. So that forms part of the owner's account, what needs to be paid. So the owner is always responsible for rates and taxes. Water and lights depend, if there's a tenant, depending on your contract, your tenant or your owner will be liable for the water and lights, and your levies will be payable by your owner of the property. But there you need to be guided by your lease agreement. If there's a lease agreement in place, you need to make sure you do get some lease agreements where it stipulates that the tenant is liable for levies. If it's a commercial property, you do get that sometimes. So you need to go and read your lease agreement. That's very important. To go and look the expenses, your rental amount that needs to be paid, and what else needs to be paid by the tenant.
Yeah, and I think, Johan, you will agree with me there. Again, it is very important that whatever you agree upon, that you kind of can have it as in a written agreement, not just kind of in, the agent told me I didn't have to pay for this, or nobody told me, or somebody said I have to pay for this, or I don't have to pay for this. Make sure that it is written in an agreement.
Definitely, it's very important.
Yeah, and then also we should maybe also just touch on building insurance and household content insurance, because that is also then something that becomes applicable once you move into a property.
Yes. So your building insurance is always the responsibility of the owner. If it's a full title, the owner will pay it. Sectional title, it is part of your levies and it should be paid by the body corporate. So you need to make sure if you buy a property, the body corporate, do they have insurance in place? The banks will not, most of the times they will not give you a bond if there's no insurance, because it's one of the requirements. You need to prove that there is insurance on that property. So even before the bond is registered, if you apply for a bond, you will need to give proof that you've got building insurance on that property. Mm-hmm. The bank will never ask you for proof of insurance of household content. That is something different. It's separate. If you've got a tenant, the tenant will only be liable for your house content. Mm-hmm. It's their property. They need to insure it. But the building insurance is the responsibility of the owner of that property.
Mm-hmm. And they again, that will apply basically monthly or annually from date of registration.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. So it's important to note that if you buy a property and you buy it cash, it's still your responsibility to get building insurance. Mm-hmm. If it's full title and there's no body corporate where there's automatic insurance included in your levy, you still need to make sure that you've got, because there's no bank going to ask for any documentation. So you need to make on your side that there is sufficient insurance in place.
Yeah, and I think then just to maybe, so the building insurance is basically for the structure. So if your house burns down or there is severe flooding or some kind of like an event that's causing damage to your structure, as opposed to household content that typically covers your furniture, your equipment within your building. So that's more or less the difference between the two and why you need both.
Yes, definitely. So you do get people that will have insurance on the building and they are under an impression that it covers their household content as well. It's different types of insurance, both. If that is what one of your requirements, you need to make sure that you have both.
Okay, excellent. And then I think we have touched on it, but just to summarize, so we've discussed a lot of different costs now. So if I see a property and it's got like in a certain selling price, so I need to know that all of these costs are in addition to what I see as the selling price, except for when there's VAT, then it could be that the VAT is including. So again, you must go and have a look at the wording, how it is advertised, or it can sometimes be if you buy from a developer, then there's no transfer duty, so that will then not be added to what your selling price is.
Yes, so you do get developers, if you buy a property from them, they will cover your transfer fees and your bond fees. It all depends, and that's where you also need to go and have a look at your contract, if the fees are included or not. But you do get certain developers that will include the bond and the transfer fees.
Okay, so that's definitely something you can look out for to save some costs. But then also, if you now apply for a bond, can it happen that the bond covers some of these fees, or are they always for the purchaser's own account?
So you do get, depending on the bank, but you get, especially for first-time home buyers, you do get a bond where certain costs can be included in your bond amount. So your bond, well, let's say, will be 100%, and you get an extra 5% for your fees. But it does happen where the 5% is sometimes not enough to cover all the fees. So again, even if you apply for fees to be included in your bond, you still need to make sure that if you've got a quote for your bond and your transfer duty, that you can afford to pay all your fees and duties with the amount available from the bank when you apply for a bond.
Yeah, and I think what is then also important to note is that if those fees are included in your bond, you are obviously paying it off over time. So there's interest involved as well. So your fees that might be like, say, for example, 150,000, if you include all the interest over the years, it might end up being 200 or 220,000. So I think that is also something that you need to take into account in your calculations. But then also, Johan, I think we've discussed the buyer or the purchaser now in quite a lot of detail. But if we move to the seller, what's the costs involved for the seller when they want to sell? I think, first of all, the agent's commission. I think that is always a big thing. So maybe you can just share with us a bit more on that.
Yeah, so your agent's commission, so even before you sign the offer to purchase, you need to, as the seller, you need to there's a mandate. You give a mandate to your estate agent, and you need to know what the percentage of the commission, if it's going to be 3%, is it going to be 5%, is it VAT included, is it excluding VAT? You need to make sure what the amount for your commission payable is. So if you sell a property, you're going to pay commission as the seller. You're going to pay your COC, your electrical certificate. So you need to appoint an electrician to do an inspection on your property and to make sure that it complies with all the regulations and legislation, and there's a fee payable for that. If there's any work that needs to be done, that will form part of your expenses, depending on on the amount of work that needs to be done by the electrician. So you've got your electrical certificate, you've got your electric fence certificate. If you've got an electric fence, you also need to provide a certificate from a registered electrician that can provide you with a certificate for electric fence. So you need to cover the cost on that as well. If you've got a gas installation, gas stove or a gas braai, you need a gas certificate if you don't have a valid certificate. And then you need to pay your levies up to date of registration for your homeowners and your body corporate. So it all depends on, is their body corporate registered? Is it a full title house with no body corporate or no homeowners? You need to know that there's going to be fees payable, certificate fees or amounts payable. Normally they will ask you, and the same with City of Tshwane or your council, normally they will ask you for a payment in advance. So you will need to pay, let's say, 3 months rates and taxes in advance in order to get a certificate from council, which you lodge with the deeds office to make sure that all the rates and taxes are paid up until date of registration. And then there will be a refund payable from City Council or from the homeowners or the body corporate on date of registration for the amount pro rata where you were not owner of that property. So that is expenses that need to be paid. And then, as we discussed previously, there's bond cancellation fees. If you have a bond registered on that property, you need to pay for your cancellation of that bond. And that's mainly the cost involved in selling a property. And there's a fee for FICA, because you need to FICA your client, even your seller, purchaser and your seller. And there's a FICA fee. And that's the expenses that the seller will need to pay in order to sell that property.
Yeah, and I think then it's again because I think you think, okay, I'm going to sell my property, so I'm going to get this amount of money in, and then it can be a surprise that there's actually costs involved in selling your property as well. And you obviously need to budget for those costs in advance because you cannot wait for the property to be registered and for you to get your money. Those fees needs to be paid in advance. So again, it's important, I think, especially if you sell because of financial reasons, then that is an important point for you to consider as well. So I think we've covered a lot of those. Again, you said that if you are living in a boomed off area, there's obviously no legal requirement that those security fees that you are paying, that needs to be paid in advance. So then just in terms of you have sold it now for the selling price or the offer price that you have accepted. So from that price, they will, or from that kind of like in total price, it will only be the agent's commission that will be deducted from that price that you have negotiated on or that you have accepted.
Yeah, look, it all depends. So you do get electricians that's willing to issue a certificate, and after date of registration, you give an undertaking before date of registration as attorney to the electrician that you will pay them on date of registration. All depends on your transaction. There might be that on date of registration, you will deduct the electrical certificate, the fees that needs to be paid. It does happen where the bank will accept, or the attorneys for the bank will accept the undertaking for your bond cancellation fees. It all depends on the transaction. So you know that you owe the electrician money, but the attorneys are going to pay them from the proceeds. It's going to be deducted. So normally, yes, it's only going to be your commission that's going to be deducted if the seller pays all the fees before date of registration. So it all depends, but mainly it's your commission that's going to be deducted from your purchase price before it's paid over, the proceeds paid over to the owner or the seller of that property.
Okay, thanks for confirming that. And I think then something that's also often quite controversial nowadays, like in building plans, and the building plans have not been approved, or they've added LAPA and Zozo hut and a swimming pool, but none of that is on the building plan. And now there's potential costs involved to update the building plan and to get it approved. What's the legal requirements around that? Or is it something that the purchaser can accept and that you just write it into the purchasing agreement? Or tell us more about that.
Look, it's very important if you sign an offer to purchase to complete a property condition report. And the main reason why I'm saying that is building plans is a big problem. If you don't have building plans, you need to disclose to the buyer of that property that there is no, even though if there's building plans, but it's not updated, you need to disclose that. So even if you disclose that, you still need to, in your property condition report or in your offer to purchase, in your agreement, you need to stipulate who's going to be responsible for building plans. And might be only building plans, what you agree on, or a occupation certificate as well. Because if you change your building plans, and I know I did it a few months ago, you need to obtain a new occupation certificate as well. So if you know that your plans and you're a seller of a property, your plans are not up to date, you need to put it in your property condition report that your plans are not up to date. Who's going to pay for the plans? Are you going to provide plans? Is the purchaser going to do it on his own? It's going to be the purchaser's responsibility. The parties need to know exactly where they stand with the building plans. But the main problem with building plans, the banks will sometimes, depending on the bank, will not approve a loan if there's not updated building plans. So then you need to obtain approved building plans before date of registration. That takes time. So you need to disclose, as the owner of that property, approved building plans. Is there any additions to the property that was not approved by council? You need to make sure that the purchaser knows that they need to obtain plans if there's no plans in place, and you, as the seller, is not going to provide plans. So it is very important to know if there's building plans and if it's up to date.
Yeah, because I assume that when you are purchasing a property and it hasn't been agreed and the plans are not approved, then once you have purchased it, then obviously it becomes your problem.
It's your responsibility as owner of that property to get approved plans and a occupation certificate. So it's always the owner's responsibility. Even if you bought, as you said, a property 10 years ago and you bought it as it is and you never changed anything, it's still your responsibility as the owner of that property to obtain approved building plans.
Yeah, so therefore it's almost first prize that if you are owning a property and you maybe want to sell in the future, that you already get your building plans approved and up to date, because that can heavily delay any selling transaction.
It does, and it takes months to approve your plan, depending on the municipality, but it can take 6 months plus sometimes. So it is wise to go and approve your plans, appoint someone to assist you to draft your plans, to change your plans, and get your approval even before you sell that property.
Yeah.
So you don't waste time. Your purchases, sometimes people are not willing to wait 6 months for a transfer to proceed. So it's wise to do that.
Yeah. And again, I think there can be extreme costs involved in that, depending on what your situation is. So rather take that into account. And I think then, Johan, what we also see happening is that now you are getting to, you want to buy this property, you find your ideal home, it is beautiful on the photos, and when you get there, then you're quite disappointed because you see, okay, there's quite a lot of maintenance that needs to be done, and it was maybe not disclosed in the advert, or even if you walk through, you see, okay, now there's actually a lot of things that I will have to change or renovate or whatever. Those kind of like in maintenance, whose responsibility is that, or how can you work around that?
Look, if it's maintenance and you see the problem, normally that will fall under the foot stewards clause, where you know that you bought this property and there's a crack in the wall. It's always wise to put that in your contract. There's a crack in the wall, both parties sign next to that. But if it is something that is not disclosed and it's you've got a big crack in we have an instance where there's a crack in your wall, in your floor, and the people just put a carpet on top of that. Then you've got a big latent defect, which footers will never cover that. But if you complete as the seller your property condition report, include all the problems so that the purchaser knows and he signs next to that he is willing to buy the property in the condition that he viewed the property and the property condition report. So everyone knows exactly if there's a crack or there's a paint, there's some damp issues, so that no one can come back and say, but I did not know there was a problem. So if there's a maintenance problem, let's call it, and I'm not talking about electricity problems. The electrician should be able to if there's a loose plug or something like that, or loose cables, it needs to be fixed. It's legislation. But if there's a loose tile and you bought the property or you viewed the property and you saw that, there might be a few loose tiles, rather put it in your property condition report so that no one can come back and say, but it was never disclosed. It's always wise to include everything.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the more transparent you are, the lesser probability of having issues later on. I think what is also obviously, if you now as a buyer go and you see there is quite a bit of maintenance to be done, then you can obviously also consider to offer a lower amount and saying, but we've obtained quotes and we can see it will cost us about 100,000 to get all of this fixed. So we are happy to fix it on our side, but then we are going to negotiate a lower price. So that is obviously also something that people can do.
Yes. It's always wise, even if you negotiate a lower purchase price, to still include all the defects, and that the purchaser takes responsibility and he will fix it at his own cost. Make sure that there's no, before registration, you struggle with who's going to fix this. You do get it sometimes that people will negotiate a lower price, and then before registration, they will ask you, but when is this going to be fixed? But it was never disclosed. It was never agreed on what is going to be fixed by the purchaser. So always include that in your contract, special conditions, or in your property condition report.
Okay. Very good advice. Thank you, Johan. I think we've dealt in a lot of detail with in the purchaser and the seller now. And we have touched a little bit on renting, but I think maybe we can just spend a little bit of time on that, because I think there's also sometimes you see this property, it's going to cost you 10,000 per month, and you think, okay, now that is affordable, and then you realize, okay, but there's actually a deposit required for 3 months or 2 months of rent that you just don't have that cash. So just talk to us a little bit about deposits when it comes to renting.
Look, deposit, there's no set percentage or amount that needs to be paid for a deposit. If you rent a property, your owner will decide on the amount that is payable, or your estate agent, the rental agent, on the amount that's payable for your deposit, or the percentage of the monthly rent that's going to be required for your deposit. It all depends on your contract. And before you sign an agreement, make sure that you know what the deposit amount is going to be. You need to make sure not only your deposit or your monthly rent, you need to make sure if it includes VAT or is excluding VAT. You need to make sure that who's going to pay your rates and taxes. Normally it's going to be your owner of that property. But as I said, sometimes with your commercial properties, you need to go and have a look who's going to pay what. And that will be, you will be guided by the agreement. And if you don't agree with the amount or whatever needs to be paid as part of rent, you need to negotiate that before you sign the rental agreement.
And again, have it written.
Yes, definitely. Don't work on a verbal agreement, even if it's family. Rather sign a lease agreement so that everyone knows who pays what. It's always better to do it like that.
Okay, and if there's a rental agent involved, is that all of that amount is then basically being deducted from the rental income, and then that is paid over to the owner? So that is not something that needs to be paid in addition, or how would that typically work?
No, so typically it will be deducted from the rent, and the proceeds will be, or the amount left will be paid over to the owner of that property. But it all depends on the agreement between the owner and the rental agent as well, because in certain instances, the agent will pay council fees. They will pay the rates and taxes, so they get the account. It all depends on the agreement between the parties, where your agent will pay rates and taxes, or they will pay the water and lights, and it's deducted from all the amounts that's going to be paid over to the owner of that property. Your rental agreement will guide you, but normally your owner pays the agent from the rental amount.
Okay, perfect. And then in terms of levies, if there's any levies payable to body corporates or homeowners associations, so that is also for the owner, or?
So your levies payable by the owner, your homeowners, your body corporate, the owner need to pay it unless, there's an agreement that the tenant will pay it. Doesn't happen often. I see it rarely, but it does. It is possible, and you need to check before you sign the agreement who's going to pay what. Normally, your owner is liable for rates and taxes, levies for your homeowners, and for your body corporate, and for your commission payable. Yes.
And then just on insurance, building insurance for the owner, and then household content for the tenant.
Yes. If it is a body corporate, the body corporate will most likely pay your building insurance. But your house content insurance is always the responsibility of the tenant if there's a tenant in that property. Yes. It will never be for the owner's account.
And if it happens that it is maybe like a furnished apartment, and the furniture belongs to the owner, I assume then it is the owner's responsibility.
Yes, then it's the owner's responsibility because it's his property. So he needs to make sure that the building and the content is insured. And most likely, because it's a unit that is already furnished, the rent will be more. And part of that rent will probably be your amount that needs to be paid to your insurance for the house content.
Okay, excellent. Johan, I think we have covered so much today, and it was really like a mouthful, but it was so important, I think, to really understand all of these costs and what's included, what's excluded, what you need to look out for. I think then just also we will do a separate episode specifically on taxes relating to properties, but then to also, while we are talking about costs, so that we are just comprehensive. So just remember that if you are obviously renting out a property or renting out a room in your house or a granny flat or something, there will be income tax applicable to any rental income that you are earning. So keep that in mind. So it will not only be the full amount that you are kind of like in earning, you will be paying tax on that. And then there's also capital gains tax, especially if you are investing in additional properties. But there's like in thresholds, and there's a lot of things involved. So we will discuss that in a separate session. But yeah, I think it is just important to remember also about the taxes, that you also budget and plan around that. So you want anything else you want to add, or?
No, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.
Okay. Thank you so much, Johan. And then again, go have a look in the description field. We will share Johan's the contact details if you want to contact them. And then also the link for where you can get the calculator to go and have your estimated transfer and your bond fees. And then there will also be a link if you want to buy property, so you can have a look at that. And if you want to sell property, there will also be my details if you want to consider that. So thank you so much. I hope you've received a lot of value. And Johan, thanks again for your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Ronelle. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Johan. Bye-bye.
Bye.